Hey everybody out there, this is Seto, and today guys we're going to talk about cards that upon their initial release were overlooked. People didn't think much of the cards, they considered them trash. Oh, this is a horrible card, and they pushed it to the side and went on to the next card. That's what we're going to talk about today. That cards like this, that over a period of a couple of weeks, be it a couple of months, sometimes it takes years and years to pass in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And for the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! To change completely, for an older card to eventually be appreciated. But this is something that has happened multiple times in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where an older card, upon initial release, is overlooked, undervalued, and the game changes a little bit and it's considered a very good card. This is something that happens a lot. Some good examples is Summoner Art, a spell card that is recently gained a lot of popularity with the new Pendulum Summoning Monsters coming out. The normal Pendulum Summoning Monsters, I should add. Needlebug's Nest, an old card again, where upon an initial release, people said, oh, mill the top 5 cards of your deck? Ugh, that's awful. Push it to the side. But now with things like Light Swarms and Shaddolls, people consider it a pretty decent card. Magical Hats, an old anime card from the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Show where upon initial release, people thought nothing of the card. They're like, oh, this is not as good as the anime Magical Hats. But now that we had, when Gear Town came out, and then when Hysteric Sign came out for Harpies, people are like, ooh, this is a pretty good card now. Vanity's Emptiness is another good example, where upon initial release in Star Strike Blast, which is, I believe, the set that Vanity's Emptiness came out as a common, people didn't think much of the card. They were like, oh, neither player can special summon. This is awful. The entire game's about special summoning back then. But as the game changed and evolved shortly after, people found, it's a pretty good card. Then another good example, the last example I'm going to talk about, is Big Eye. Big Eye. When Big Eye first came out, people didn't think much of the card. They're like, oh, it's got a good effect, but who's ever going to make rank 7 exceed monsters? That's never going to happen, right? Mermails weren't around. Dragon Rulers weren't even a thought on the horizon. Nobody even knew about Dragon Rulers, but about a year later after the set came out, people were like, ooh, Mermails, you can make Big Eye. Oh, about 2 years later, oh, Dragons make Big Eye. Ooh, it's a pretty good card now. It's very easy to exceed level 7s now. So cards like that, it happens time and time again in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And what I always try to do to avoid it is when I look at a set that's coming out, I look at a set and I'm like, what cards could be underappreciated? When I go through a commons box, I'm like, what cards, could potentially have potential in the future, maybe, Looking at the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And how it's evolving, can I predict somehow, what could be happening in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! What cards possibly could become eventually good or very popular, and I can use them when I build that deck in the future. It's something I've always tried to do. It's hard to do. We're not fortune tellers. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, and I'm like, ooh, what is Konami thinking? Because apparently nobody knows what Konami's thinking, but that's beside the point here. It's something that I think everybody, when looking at a set upon its initial release, should think about. A good example of a card that made a quick turnaround is Ghost Trick Alucard. Upon initial release, nobody really thought Alucard was that good outside of Ghost Tricks. They said, oh, it's good in Ghost Tricks. It was about an $8 card. But then Jeff Jones, I believe it was, showed how you could use Alucard, and it jumped up to a $25 card and stayed about $20 as of right now. So you have to kind of look at a set upon its initial release. What are some just good generic cards? And then you got to think, what cards in the future could be potentially good for decks, a year from now or 2 years from now, or just a couple of, sets away. What cards have potential for the future? It's something that I think every player should think about when looking at a set and deciding what to get, especially if the card is not very expensive. Say the card's like $1 or $2, like $1 or $2. It's worth maybe the gamble on that $2 for the card, to buy that card right then and there, not have to buy it when that in the future when you're like, oh, I wish I got that card way back when because I would so need it. I so need it right now for this deck I want to play, right now. So it's something I think every player should think about when looking at a set. And tell me also if you can think of any other cards. I know there's a slew of other cards out there that upon their initial release, people overlooked these cards. But a little while later or a couple years later, people are like, ooh, this is a really good card. So I just want to talk about this today. I thought it was a topic worth discussing, and a topic to give you a time to just think about when the next Duelist Alliance comes out. Think about and say to yourself, what cards could be good for the future of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh? It's something to always think about. And until next time, guys, take care, have fun dueling, good luck dueling to all of you, and I hope this video was some good food for thought. And until next time, guys, Seto Kaiba, I'm out of here, guys.